So holy shit, what did we just watch? Power Book 2 Ghost just keeps on getting better and better. I always did say there were more secrets to learn about Mecca, and not only did he come face to face with Tariq, but we found out his connection to Ghost, and how he also knows Tommy, but how he's a fucking snitch, which ties back to the very first couple of seasons of Power with Filipe Lobos. But this wasn't all. We also saw Monet finding out that Mecca is Dante Spears, and she definitely has a bigger play up her sleeve. But now that we found out that Dante is a snitch, I do think this is his downfall. But elsewhere, Brayden had a choice to make because he's too deep in the game, and I did wonder whether Brayden was gonna take this kill shot in this episode, but he just didn't have it in him, but Effie did, because she knows there can't be any loose ends. But there was also a lot more that went down in this episode from Drew, Diana, Tate, and Zeke, and we're gonna run through everything in this review and recap. But let's kick things off with where this episode started, and this was so good to see. It was Tariq's nightmare of not just Jabari and Carrie, but if you notice, it's Tariq's guilty conscience speaking. Apart from Ray Ray, I would say. I mentioned in the lead up to this episode that Tariq, he doesn't fight fairly, because there is no such thing as a fair fight. He'll always use everything at his disposal to win, and he had a hand in all of the deaths that we saw. We saw Kanan, Raina, Lakeisha, telling him that he's the reason Tasha killed her, leaving Cash without a mom. And we also saw Joe Proctor, because Tariq left the back door open for Tommy to kill him. And Tariq has a lot of blood on his hands, and Proctor did mention if he's checked on Elisa Marie, something which I do think could come back in the future. Now the only person we never saw was Ghost. Carrie showed him a phone call from Ghost, which he never answered. But Lauren turning up in this nightmare was a direct foreshadow to what was gonna come for her in this episode, and Tariq telling her not to go into the class is because he was trying to save her, just like he tried to do in episode 9. But let's start with Tariq's trial and Rashad Tate, because this is gonna lead us on to Brayden, Effie, Lauren, and Cane, and help us tie this whole storyline with Lauren together. Now Rashad Tate, he was the next one on the stand, and Tate learned some interesting facts about there being 2 people involved in Jabari's murder, and another eyewitness from his brother Kamal. But to keep his mouth shut, Tariq promised him that he'll get him what he wants, and he delivered. So Rashad Tate kept his promise, and he used the information from Kamal to blow this case up, by making it look like the prosecution were hiding evidence. And because of this, we saw Jenny Sullivan taking a different approach. She followed up on the wire that Lauren was wearing, that caught Brayden and Cane. And again, someone I mentioned that could connect the dots from season 1 was Trace Weston. He couldn't keep his mouth shut about their connection to Cane and Ramirez, and along with Mecca, I really don't have a good feeling about Trace in the final episode. But Brayden proved one thing, he's not a snitch, despite evidence being put right in front of him. But here's where it got messy for Brayden, because he found out that Tariq gave the photo to Rashad Tate, and he told Brayden this shit, it's not a game, this is life or death, and linking this back to a fair fight. This is an example of how Tariq will use all the tools at his disposal to win, no matter what the sacrifice is. And another sacrifice had to be Lauren, but Tariq cares about her, and he wasn't willing to let that happen, especially when he found out that Lauren was told that they were going after Brayden, and she caught Brayden and Cane on the wire. Tariq knew that Lauren was in danger, because once this got out and Cane found out, then Lauren was dead. So Tariq told Lauren that she needs to run. But here's where Tariq is too trusting in Effie, and Davis McLean did warn him, trust no one. And this applies to everyone, not just Effie. But we spoke about how Effie always asked the right questions, so she asked, why is Lauren running? And when he said she caught Cane and Brayden on a wire, notice how she only focused on Cane, because she knows what Cane is capable of. And I did say, I didn't like the way she mentioned Cane's name in episode 6. She really did switch when she found out about Cane, and in this moment, she knew what had to be done, because Malibu Barbie, she was a snitch, and snitches have to go, and she knows the game, there can't be any loose ends. And who did she go and meet after? Cane. She told him everything about how Lauren was wearing a wire, and how she got him on tape with Brayden, and this is who Cane was asking Brayden to deal with, but did Brayden have it in him? Now, he had a choice to make, kill Lauren or Cane kills him, or he could actually snitch on Cane and get him off the streets, because Jenny Sullivan did give him another option. But Brayden, he's not a snitch, but he did go to Effie for help, who told him that this is the game, and this was his choice, and it was too late. He was way too deep in to go back. So we saw Tariq telling Brayden to get Lauren out of town, not knowing what was going on between Cane, Effie, and Brayden couldn't pull the trigger, he didn't have it in him, but someone who does is Effie. She turned up, gave Lauren a smack and took her away, and she did what needed to be done, and even though they never showed the kill on screen, her reaction getting into bed with Tariq, it does seem like she did get the job done. So that's the end of Lauren, and hopefully they confirm this in episode 10. But let's move on and talk about the Tejadas and this big snitch. Now, after the secret was revealed in episode 8, Zeke didn't want to speak to Monet, but he was willing to speak to Dante because he was telling the truth. So they both met, and Dante told him that he needs to be so good that it doesn't matter if his age comes out. He offered to pay for a private coach if he focuses 100% on his game, but he had to give Monet the opportunity to speak to him, and when they did, he asked her if she had anything to do with Carrie's death, and she said no, she was with Dante, which she backed up, but we all know she did because if Carrie was alive, then Zeke would never have gone back to Monet. But Zeke was done. He called the agent that gave him his card in episode 2, but who leaked the news about his age to the press? Dante is always someone who tried to control Monet and the Tejadas, and we even saw him offering to hire a PR firm to help Zeke. And then we saw this drive-by shootout which Mecca questioned about whether it could be Lorenzo, but the way Monet looked at Mecca in this scene, you could tell she had doubts about who Dante Spears was, and we're gonna get to that in just a moment. But he wanted to get Monet, Zeke and the kids and leave, but Cane stole his bag and gave it to Tariq, and Mecca knew what he did. He even said he let the drug shit slide, but not the bag, which he pulled out a tracking device for. So if he had a tracking device for the bag, then what makes you think he didn't have the same for the ring? Now this is where Monet finally found out who Dante Spears was, because Cane said he was gonna take one for the family, but she asked for a picture of Mecca, and this is where everything would have clicked for Monet. But this bag that Mecca was after had everything from passports to snitch papers, and Tariq asked McClane for background information on Dante Spears, and he said that he needs to watch his ass, because he wasn't just dangerous and well protected, he was one of the biggest informants on record. But just before we get to Tariq and Mecca, this episode had a lot going on. In the background we had Lorenzo who tasked Drew to go and get his drugs back, and he did with the help of Diana. Now we saw Drew using Ev to get the pass to the roof, and we saw Diana using Law 12 from the 48 Laws of Power on Tariq, using selective dishonesty to disarm a victim. And this is where you sometimes have to tell the truth to get others to trust you. Even if it is a lie, you have to make it look like the truth. But we saw Diana opening up to Tariq about Zeke and Monet to get him to drop his guard, and when he did, and when he was out of the room, she took his QR code, and the drugs found their way back to Lorenzo's hands, and they were back in business. So Tariq lost his drugs, but it didn't matter because of what happened in this scene. So we come back to Tariq meeting Mecca, where Mecca said that he knows a lot about Tariq St. Patrick. He knows about Uncle Tommy and Ghost, and how he knows that he's the one who killed him. And it starts to make sense with the way that Mecca gave him this look in episode 2 when he saw Tariq. But this is where we saw Tariq really bringing out his inner Ghost again. He called Mecca's bluff, and he said he's a snitch. Isn't that what Dante Spears does? Because he's ratted out some of the biggest dealers in the game, who also snitched on Filipe Lobos for his freedom. But Lobos never found out that he was a snitch, and that's because Ghost and Tommy killed him. And he told Tariq, when he meets his father in hell, tell him I said good looking out. But this is something I will go through in more detail in my recap part 2, which I will upload later on today. But the reason why Tariq's drugs being taken by Drew and Diana didn't exactly matter to him anymore, because he talked his way into 2 million from this snitch, and that's what he needs to pay for Davis McClane, 2 million. But Mecca was pissed, and he was going straight for Cane, until he saw Monet in his apartment, and this is where it dawned on Cane who exactly Mecca was. He was Zeke's father, Dante Spears, and this is where more secrets were revealed, with how Mecca was using Cane, until he came up with a master plan. But Mecca did say he knew all of them stole their shit, but Monet said Lorenzo was the one who set that up, not her, and she was ready to accept Mecca's terms and go with him, and so was everybody else. But he has to get rid of Lorenzo for this to happen. But this is a part of her bigger plan, because there is no way she's going with Mecca, because he's a big time snitch, which I'm sure Tariq will tell them, and this is the beginning of Mecca's downfall. I really don't see any way out for Mecca, because you can't leave any loose ends. And let's not forget, Evelyn did warn Monet, but this tracking device that he told Tariq to keep with him, I do think it's going to come into play next week. And everything does point to Mecca's death. I do think he is going to be the big death next week. But elsewhere in the episode, we saw Rashad Tate giving the photo to Stephen Ott. And is this going to have some implications for Brayden and the Westons? And what about Trace, Brayden's brother? He's another snitch and another loose end that needs to be tied up. But we also saw Yaz in a new home. And I'd been reading a lot of theories about Ramona and Ghost adopting Yaz. But this puts all those theories to bed. And Tariq knows that he has to let Yaz go for her to have a chance of growing up and living a normal life. And that was episode 9. Which was by far one of my favourite episodes of Power Book 2 Ghost so far, because we had the returning characters, secrets that were revealed, Effie on Demon Time, Tariq showing his inner Ghost, and finding out that Mecca was a snitch. So drop all your comments down below, and I will be back with my part 2, going into detail about Mecca, Lobos, and Ghost. So if you're new to the channel and you haven't done so already, then remember to smash the subscribe button if you want to see everything Power Book 2 Ghost and Power Universe related. But as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.